So today I'm going to make a yeast starter for a beer I'm going to brew tomorrow. I usually do it the day before, and it works out typically. So everything you need is basically something to boil in. I use a flask, or you can just use whatever pot you have. And if I use a pot, I'll typically transfer it into a really big mason jar, and then it makes it easy to shake it up later, but we'll get to that. You're gonna need your yeast, obviously. I've got some California ale yeast because I am making an IPA tomorrow. You're gonna need your dried malt extract. So this is basically just malt sugar. It's the final end result if you get all the water out of your wort, basically. So it's really great. It's super easy to use. A lot easier than actually doing a mash for this kind of thing. Measuring cup, funnel. That's pretty much it. You can get a little more involved. I'll show you a couple ways to aerate the wort and the yeast and keep it moving. But really all you need to do is shake it like whenever you walk by it, and it'll work regardless. So the ratio for a yeast starter is, I'm doing 1,000 milliliter, which is approximately a quart. So I'm gonna do a quart or 1,000 milliliters of water and 1 cup of DME. So that'll give us a specific gravity of about 1.04. And that's kind of what you want for your yeast. You don't want to stress your yeast by giving them too much sugar because they'll end up less healthy than you actually want them, because like the more sugar the yeast needs to eat, the more stress it causes, and then like there's die off, and you know, it's a big issue. You can also, which I'm actually going to do, but I forgot to bring out, is I'm going to add some yeast nutrient. So that's just a combination of minerals that your yeast likes to grow, and it'll keep them happy and healthy. So I'm going to go ahead and fill this to around the 1,000 milliliter mark. There's not a mark on it, so I'm just going to estimate. So I've got my water, and this is the yeast nutrient. I use the Yeast blend. You can add it directly into the boil to help your yeast out, but it's also great to use for starters. So I'm just going to throw in like that much. Just estimate. Get that all going, and then I'm going to measure out my DME. So again, we're going to use 1 cup. You could get super scientific with weighing out your DME, and basically what your ratio would be 10 milliliters of water per 1 gram of DME. I'm going to try not to get this on the sides because it will burn, unfortunately. It's very sticky because it's a very fine powder. So while you're getting your wort ready for your starter, you should just pull your yeast out, let it warm up. I'm probably gonna stick it somewhere warm in my house just to get it all started. Shake it up a bit. You want it to kind of acclimate to your room before you throw it into the wort. So one thing you've got to worry about if you are using a flask or a small pot or anything that has the possibility of not holding in all of your hot break. So once this starts boiling, it's going to have foam coming completely out of the flask if I let it. So I'm gonna leave it on high right now, but then I'm gonna drop it down when I see it start boiling. You'll be able to see the bubbles happen. So I bought this 2,000 liter flask because I used to be doing 800 milliliter starters in 1,000 milliliter flask, and it was almost impossible to not boil over. So this is the first starter I've actually done in this one. So it looks like it's going to be okay, but you've still got to monitor it a lot. So I'm just waiting for this to break and hoping it will. It kind of looks like it's going to right now. So this is called the hot break. So I'm trying to cool it down by blowing in it so it doesn't kind of explode like it's trying to. So I just had to turn it completely off. And I'm gonna wait for this to all settle down. So there, now it's finally breaking a little bit. Alright, so it looks like we actually got a good hot break. Now it's just boiling, pretty clear. And I'm gonna let this boil for 10 minutes. I'm boiling it to basically kill anything that was on the DME, on the yeast nutrient, on the flask, you know, just basically sanitizing it. We want it to be super sterile for our yeast. That's why you don't want to go away from your stove. So this is about done, and I'm going to basically just cover it with this aluminum foil. I didn't bother sanitizing this aluminum foil because the steam will kill anything on here. And then I'm going to just place it in some like lukewarm water to start cooling it down. Sometimes I stick it in my freezer. But I actually feel like it touching the water cools it down a lot quicker. So I'm just going to put it in this bowl and then add some ice once it's kind of stabilized. Don't put any glass into ice water if it's been boiling, because that's how you break glass. So just gonna do this guy. And I'm gonna let that sit. So we're gonna want it to get down to, I usually get it down to around 85 degrees before I put my yeast in. So you can't put your yeast into really hot work because it's living. So like you don't want to kill your yeast. They do grow pretty fast at 85 degrees, so it's going to get us going really quickly, and hopefully by then my yeast it's about 70 degrees in here. Hopefully it's up to around there, and then we can start aerating it, and I'll show you a couple ways to do that in a second. Okay, now that this is around 85 degrees, I'm going to add my yeast. Make sure to mix up your yeast before you cut open your packet. So the reason I'm doing this yeast starter is because I only have one packet of yeast, and I am going to make a IPA that is around, the original gravity will be around 1.065, and they actually say on the back of this that this is a White Labs packet. You can get a gravity range up to 1.048 with one of these packets, but they suggest using either 2 or 1 packet and a starter if you're going above that. So I just want enough yeast to actually be able to ferment my beer. So we are going to sanitize the packet thoroughly. Sanitize our scissors thoroughly. And this is just Star San. It's my favorite sanitizer because you don't have to rinse it. And I'm going to pull my cap. I'm going to sanitize my cap just in case. Stick it back on there just to mix this up. Okay, so in theory, you can just do this, and this will give you a starter. When I first started making starters, I would just throw it in one of these mason jars, throw a lid on, and shake it up every time I walked by it, really, and it worked. So it's really easy. You want to aerate it because for yeast to build their cell walls, they actually need oxygen. So like once your beer is fermenting, you don't want oxygen in it because it can give you off flavors. But when you're just messing with yeast, you definitely need oxygen or the yeast can't grow. So it also keeps the yeast suspended in the solution, so it will just help mix it around and help them eat all the wort in there. So try not to be as messy as I am right now. Okay, so that's the first way. You can also use what's called a stir plate. And a stir plate's basically like a magnet, and you stick a little piece of metal inside your flask, stick it on the magnet spins it, and it creates a vortex and gets oxygen into the wort. But what I do, which is kind of unconventional, but cheap because I had all this equipment at my house already, is use an aquarium pump. So I have this aquarium pump from when we were doing hydroponic plants, and all I do is I have this HEPA filter attached to it. So I'm going to attach some sanitized tubing to my HEPA filter, and I'm going to stick this in here and it'll just pump air into it. So you got to make sure it's super sanitized. So I'm just going to spray it again. So this will just go directly into our wort. Try to get it to the bottom. And I actually like to rubber band it around here. I lost the rubber band. This is extremely unconventional. So I go ahead and do that. And then I throw some plastic wrap over it. And I sanitize everything. So the plastic wrap is really only here to keep bugs out, essentially. So I throw that on, and then I throw another rubber band over my plastic wrap. And then I just plug this guy in. So this is my Frankenstein of a quart aerator, essentially, a starter aerator, and it works really well. So tomorrow I'll have a super robust amount of yeast to pitch, and my beer should turn out pretty good with it.